Okay, so now you've got the theory nailed. Let's dive into the practical, and I would talk about each of these steps. How would I implement them in your business? So the first one is raising prices and fixed pricing strategy immediately. The price increase, I do this a lot, especially for new clients. So it doesn't need to be for all clients across your portfolio, for all new clients starting today, between 10 to 20%. And you'll realize that actually it doesn't affect your conversions that much, and it might embolden you to push the envelope a little bit more. A/B test the price resistance. So that's where you can push up the price increase a little bit. Say we've got 5 leads in the pipeline, test it with 2 at a certain price, maybe test it a little bit higher with the next 2, and try and get some market feedback about where that ceiling is, rather than just putting it up 5%. We don't want to be leaving money on the table, and using A/B testing can really help with that. The next one is stopping blended hourly rates. So this is a big killer, especially as an agency grows and the people who have been with you for a while get pay rises because they're great and they're awesome. We want to keep them, but their hourly charge out rate does not go up, and you are losing margin in that deal. And so we need to have a higher rate for the higher paid people. So if you're using a weighted average charge out rate, stop doing that. Price and quote your higher paid people on a different tier, and make sure that you're actually making enough margin on them, and that their hours obviously should be less than a junior on a project, unless you're quoting for long, big hours for those high paid people. But you need to be pricing and quoting it if you're going to have those extra hours from those people. The next one I do is audit charge out rates. So this little table shows you some simple math with a spreadsheet that I run for people, but basically, this illustrates my point exactly, right? A strategist on 120K, their hourly cost is roughly $58, including super. Their markup, I would prefer at least 4. Often agencies are less than this, but their minimum markup on that hourly cost should be times 4, times 3.5 ideally, which means you should not be charging them out less than $231. It's pretty simple math, and the markup is where you're building in some margin to pay for your overhead, to add to your profit margin, and to cover their wage, of course. So that gives you an idea of how you can scale up your charge out rate depending on the person. The next one is eliminate free consulting, charge for onboarding and discovery. I've had some great wins over the years with people who either made their onboarding period shorter, so you collected the cash quicker rather than a big, long, drawn-out process, or they charged up front for their onboarding and they made it a super valuable strategic product that they could then roll and into the next client. So it was still super valuable, and we've had huge wins where we've started a 5K strategy and pushed that price up higher and higher as we went up market. So you want to eliminate free consulting and wasting time and positioning yourself as an order taker. You want to be the thought leader. Last one, implement premium pricing tiers. So this would be kind of like how your strategist is a premium pricing tier with their charge out rate. This would be over your entire product service. So having a much higher premium pricing tier to increase your perceived value. And that's for maybe your tier 1 big corporates who have the budget and you can charge. But people can't pay for your top tier product if you're not offering it. If you're only a low cost provider, that's the only thing on the menu, you're obviously losing margin there as well. So that's another quick tip. And let's move on to the next one, step 2. So cash flow and speeding up payments. So we do this at Trimline, and I will highly recommend it for all my clients, all new retainer clients, to the first of the month in advance. So we want upfront payments as much as possible, especially if you're collecting media spend, things like that for paid media agencies. You do not want to be acting as a bank and paying for that on behalf of your clients. You need to plug in their card or collect that money upfront. And ideally, the retainers are monthly in advance. If you can't, because obviously sometimes we are helping bigger, especially those bigger tier 1 corporates, see if we can shorten our payment terms down to 7 to 14 days instead of the normal 30 to 60 days. Often a conversation up front when you both have the goodwill about, we need to be optimizing our cash flow. We've got to pay our team fortnightly. We can't be sitting on 30-day terms. People generally will understand, but if you don't ask, you don't get. So try and shorten your payment terms as much as possible and negotiate it with your existing clients as well. The rolling deposits idea, this is mainly for the longer term projects. So especially like people building big websites or bigger projects of any sort, having some milestones set to certain time deadlines, not to certain deliverable deadlines that are dependent on the client. The worst case is when we have all of these problems and the client hasn't delivered everything, so we can't finish the project, so we can't get paid. We're kind of powerless, and the client knows that. And I suspect often they sit on the deliverables because they know they don't want to pay you for the last bit, and they may not have the cash or whatever, they're holding things up. So make it in the terms that it's four weeks in is when the next payment due. 6 weeks after that is the third payment. And so it's kind of set on time, not on deliverables that the client can withhold from you. And you lose power in that situation, obviously. Pretty obvious one. This one, CFO is going to tell you this. Always looking at outstanding invoices, strict payment follow-ups. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So make sure that we are reminding them regularly in a nice way, obviously with a human touch. But monthly follow-ups are not enough, especially for those bigger invoices. You can automate this. So you can, Xero has the ability to send those auto reminders. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one, depending on how often your bookkeeping's done, because you don't want to be chasing people, but actually you just didn't do your bookkeeping, so it thinks it's outstanding. So be careful of that. And it's not a personal touch. So I prefer probably the founder or someone in the management team to be chasing up the bigger ones, because that is the most important ones. And often for founders, it leads nicely into this point. You can create a second email alias. It's really good to separate, obviously, your founder relationship with the other person you're working with the person like chasing for money. People get weird about chasing money. I don't, but people get weird about chasing money. So people might set a different name, email alias that's essentially you still. And then you can kind of have those conversations from that different person. And it makes your agency look bigger too. Hey, how good's that? And then the last one is build up your operating expenses. So build up your capital in the business to have 2 months worth of cash sitting there in case of an emergency. And that's something every time I work with a new client, often people do not have this. And this is a huge first goal that I try and put on the table. So if you don't get paid for a while, you still have enough cash to pay your team and you don't go into panic mode straight away. So that's some cash flow tips straight up to help you. And then step 3, expense review. Of course, CFO telling you about margin is going to look at cutting costs. I prefer, honestly, increasing profits. And that is by far the biggest leverage you will get. Sometimes the hardest to do, but increase your prices is honestly the best thing to do. Only if it starts on the new clients, but then look at your unprofitable clients. But also finding margin is looking at our expenses. So a zero-based budgeting approach for non-essential expenses. So this is kind of a mindset thing. Instead of looking at our past spend and saying, oh, we need to be 10% below last year, or oh, subscriptions is at $3,000, let's try and make it 2.5. Clear decks and then make every expense justify its existence. And that will help you streamline things so much more, because does it help the boat go faster? Is it really moving the needle, or has it just built up over time and you've forgotten about it? So that's a really kind of gives you that harsher mindset to review things. Next one is to categorize all expenses. So any non-essential software, subscriptions, travel, entertainment, have a look at all those different buckets and be super, super critical on those ones about, do you really need it? The critical ones probably are the travel, definitely the entertainment. And then often with the software one, a couple tips there, you might be paying for too many like heads or too many seats for that software. So just double check that if you had a slightly bigger team and you've downsized, that you've reduced your plan, or go to them and negotiate with a plan, because often, especially software, because they're making so much margin on every subscription, they are open to discounting massively. So tell them you're going to leave, ask them is it the best deal they can possibly do, and they often will give you a better deal, because it's all margin for software. The incremental cost for another customer is sweet bugger all. So they're ones you can definitely negotiate with. Next one, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Lock in good annual rates. I have some clients that do that who are looking for, those awesome AppSumo, lifetime deals on stuff. But also there's some software, especially software providers, who give you that kind of really juicy annual rate if you lock it in during those sales. But obviously don't go overboard. You should need it first. Negotiate vendor pricing and switch to annual payments. It's kind of similar to that software negotiation I just talked about. You've got more power than you think. You've got more purchasing power than you think, especially for the bigger expenses. So not just software. This is just an example. Go to them and see if you can negotiate, because often you can. This next one, reduce founder ego expenses. And an ego expense, I'm sure you can guess, is something that makes you feel good about yourself, but may not actually help the boat go faster and may not add to our success for the business. So we're all guilty of it, right? We're all human beings and we want to be seen, but it might be that fancy European lease car. It might be that nice fancy Swish office with the view. It might be the long lunches that you like to treat your whole team to. And it might be some cheeky personal or grey area items that you're running through the business. Be honest with yourself. Do you really need it? Or do you want to build a valuable business with heaps of margin that you can maybe exit one day, or that you can invest into build other wealth? I know what I'd be doing, but have a good hard look at yourself if you're doing any of these and think about whether you can trim some of them. The next one is contractor freelancers. Any ones that are not directly contributing to profitability. Sometimes this is a bit of a black box, especially if we've got people hanging around. You don't really review your subcontractors that much. Well, you pay extra for contractors, right? You pay extra for the flexibility of having a contractor. So take advantage of that when there's down times, or they're not actually doing much or adding very much value to the business. Cut them. And you can always rehire them. That's the whole point of contractors, right? Return on investment marketing spend. So I'm always looking at our marketing spend as a % of revenue every month. And this is one where the devil's in the detail. Like, we might be spending 5-10 grand a month on various initiatives, but where are our actual leads coming from? Ask your leads where they came from and cut any of the things that aren't working. I think people waste a lot of time on like soft marketing stuff that isn't really getting that many results, often in the social media world where it's not really direct. It's all just for kind of show. It's smoke and mirrors. Where are our actual leads coming in the door from? Let's focus on that. And you know, some successful ones that I see agencies doing with is like referrals, partnerships with other agencies that don't do what they do, and then specific content marketing on your niche as well. And then the last one, this is to put in your calendar, is to schedule a 15-minute monthly financial review. I've got one in my business. Get the recurring calendar invite, you know, every fourth Monday of the morning, every Friday, whatever time you want to do it, and run a P&L, trim the fat, and keep it. It's like barnacles on a ship. They keep growing back. And so you need to keep reviewing it and make sure you're as lean as possible. So those are the immediate wins in month 1, days 1 to 30. Hopefully some of these you can implement now and find some margin immediately. All right, I'll see you in the next one.